what the plans are that this week we do Bamidbar and Nasso. So next week we can give our entire attention to the holiday of Shavuos. Give a whole class on Shavuos. Okay? Now, we'll do a review of the two Parshas, but first I want to talk a little about the time period that we're in, the spheres of the Omer, the counting of the Omer. Okay? As we mentioned quite a few times, especially during Pesach, that this time period, going from our physical freedom of Pesach to that's a means to an end, right? The end product, the fruit of that product being Shavuos, to get the Torah, to know how to live our lives, okay? So these days are called this counting of the Omer. And Shavuos is called in the Talmud, in the Gemara, Atzeres. Okay, Atzeres has several different meanings. One of them is like Atzor is to gather in, to group, to unite. So there's a lot of ideas about showing a love for our fellow Jew during this time period, and developing our character traits. As we mentioned, that's why we learned Pirkei Avos, ethics of our fathers, during this time period. And we know that the students of Rabbi Akiva died because on their level there was a lack of honor for one another. So Atzeres, the holiday of Shavuos, is a holiday of a union, of showing love for our fellow Jew during this time period. So that's what we're trying to do. Now, there's another type of Atzeres, another type of unity. Besides the unity that we have to show to each other, as a nation of Israel, there is a unity within ourselves, with our outward action and our inner feelings. Let me explain. Pesach, right, which is Passover, right? It's one of the few, it's not a bad translation. Because it means God skipped over our houses, right? That's traditionally why we call it the death of the firstborn, last of the plagues. And he smote, like that word, he smote the Egyptians' firstborn, right? Okay, so that's Passover. But there's another idea. There's another skipping over. There's another passing over, if you will. You might remember that we discussed the idea that we say, it's a medrash from Song of Songs, Pitzchuli Pesach Shel Machat. Hashem says, you make me the opening like the size of the eye of a needle, and I will enlarge that opening to the size of a great hall. In other words, we're all starting out, we're all trying to be Baal Teshuvas, we're all trying to serve God on our own level, so we're overwhelmed. There's so much to do, we can't do it. So God says, look, just take it one thing at a time. You make a small step towards me, and I'll draw you close. Okay? The paradigm for this is Pesach. This is where that concept starts. Because usually what's required, to the ultimate degree, usually what's required is what's called asarusa delatata, an awakening from below. And then there's asarusa delayal, then a Kodesh Baruch Hu responds. Pesach was unique that God skipped over our necessity of showing an awakening from beneath. We were on the 49th level of impurity, the bottom of the bottom. God skipped over that opening that we're supposed to make, the eye of the needle, and grant us a redemption, and granted us not only redemption, but insights and spirituality till we got to the 49th level of holiness. Not by our own means, not by our efforts, strictly as a matana, a gift from above. Okay? So, what happens? What happens as a Baal Tshuva? You first start out, right, and you feel things. You start feeling Shabbos. You feel mitzvahs. You feel like a schmuck in learning, right? And then you're in it for a while, and you feel nothing. Like, what happened? Right? We all have that feeling. At the beginning, everything was so exciting. We felt like a schmuck and everything, right? And all of a sudden, we feel like God just dropped us in the desert. And we don't feel anything. Okay? That's Pesach. Pesach, we got an artificial sweetener, an artificial spiritual saccharin of what 49th level of holiness is all about, of getting close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of feeling the geschmack and the zest and the sweetness of Torah mitzvahs. Right? That's what happened on Pesach. We were given that. Then God said, you see how beautiful it is? Now, it can't stay with you because you didn't earn it. I have to take it away. Now comes the 49 days of the counting of the Omer. I want you to earn it on your own. But first God gives it to us. So we have, right, if He didn't give it to us initially, we would never have a thirst for it. Now they have a little bit of a taste what it's all about, right? Now we want it, and now we try to earn it on our own. That's Pesach to Shavuos, the 49 days of the Omer. Working on it, earning that artificial spiritual high that we got on one shot when we left Egypt. Now we got to earn it each day. That's our lives. Initially, we started to move towards God, right? And we felt everything. Everything was so beautiful. But we didn't earn that. That was given to us by God. He let us feel like every now and then you feel something in your davening at the beginning when you felt something, you're alone in your room, you're out in the woods, and you feel the closest to Hashem. Right? You didn't earn that. We didn't earn that. Okay? But God let you have that, to feel it. He gave you a present. Now He has to take it away because by definition, if you don't work for it, it's not going to last. Okay? But now at least you have a taste. You have an insight where it's all about. Okay? But now we've got to start earning it on our own. That's what's happening. Okay? And this time period especially, that's what's happening. Okay? Any questions on that? To finish this up, there was a legitimate science to this horoscope business. There's the Mazoilus, if you look at the tribes, the months of the Hebrew calendar, right? Adar is fish, right? The fish, and there was, something to this. So, the holiday that Shavuos comes on, the month that Shavuos comes on, right? Sivan, you know what that horoscope is. You guys know this? Twins. Atzeres. The holiday of Shavuos, a union, putting together that what you got artificially, right? And now you earn it on your own. Twins, you got it? That spiritual high that you have, and now you earned it. They come together by the time Shavuos comes after 49 days. That's the idea. Okay. Any questions? In the Torah, the Hebrew months is the first month, the second month. It all goes after Nisan. Like in Israel, the days of the week, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, it all follows Shabbos. The names Tishrei, Sivan, all those are Babylonian names. It was kind of like a reminder, don't think that you're not in exile anymore when we had that first little mini redemption. It wasn't the ultimate redemption. We maintained the Babylonian names as a reminder that we're still in exile. There's a correlation between the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 hours of the day, the 12 hours of the night, right? The 12 constellations, the 12 months of the year. There is a very strong parallel and coordination. That's why Yaakov grieved so much when he thought Yosef was dead. Yosef, that would be enough. That was the son. But on top of it, Yosef was the tzaddik. He's called Yosef a tzaddik. That would be enough as well. But in addition, it was the whole world that was lost. Because the tribes represent, right? The constellations, the months, everything. It wasn't just, you understand that? When we talk about these people, we're not talking about individuals. We're talking about all the cosmos, all the spiritual worlds, right? The same thing. There's no difference between Torah and commentary. We had a verse last week's portion. Actually, it's in this week's Torah. It says HaToras. It says Torah, plural. The oral and the written law. As a matter of fact, it says that Shemitah, just like all its details were given on Mount Sinai, this is Rashi, that all the mitzvahs were given in with all its details and all its ramifications at Mount Sinai. Everything was given to Moshe at Mount Sinai, right? And we had an oral law that remains, that's the whole discussion, that was to remain oral, but during times of persecution, it was threatened for it to be lost, so it was written down. Okay, but it was all given from God to Moshe at Mount Sinai. And as a matter of fact, we were discussing, Vilna Gaon, in his later life, just learned Chumash. And from the verses in the Chumash, he saw all the Gemaras, all the Mishnah, all the Gemaras, all the Midrashim, all the Kabbalah, just from the verses. That's all he needed to learn in his later life. That's the way it originally was. Because the Vilna Gaon was a throwback. See, back then, Hebrew, which was really properly called Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language, so that was like reserved, that we didn't always use it. There are certain prayers, like a Hey Shmei Rabbah is in Aramaic for a reason. There's a whole thing about angels knowing certain languages and not Aramaic. There's a whole thing there. So a lot of things, Aramaic has a certain holiness too, but not like Lashon HaKodesh. So, and to this day, you'll find Aramaic, or people today will speak like Yiddish in Yerushalayim. Some people will not speak Lashon HaKodesh except on Shabbos. Yeah. The first tablets, the body of the tablets, right, were also from Hashem. Because at the first tablets, the first two, still, we were on the same level. Our bodies and our souls were not contradictions. They were one and the same. We were on the level of Adam before the sin. Therefore, the luchos, the first set of tablets, the soul of the luchos, the soul of the tablets is the writing, and the body of it is the physical tablets. They both came from Hashem. But after the sin of the golden calf, we showed a contradiction in body and soul, right? It wasn't the same. So therefore, the body of the tablets had to come from us. It didn't come from God anymore. But the soul came from God, the writing on the luchos. Okay, let's move on. All right, now we're going to move on with the Parshas, a brief review of the two Parshas, Bamidbar and Nasso, and then we'll go back and hit highlights. Bamidbar, of course, new book, opens up and talks about the groupings of the children of Israel in the desert, how they grouped, how they traveled. Okay, 12 tribes, groupings of four groupings of three. Okay, and a banner over each one. Very interesting, and it's told in detail. Okay, that's a lot of discussion of Bamidbar. Nasso deals with the following basic themes. Nasso deals with, it's very interesting, Nasso deals with the sacrifices that the princes of the tribes brought. They're all the same. If you look at them, everyone brought one goat, one cow, right? And it's described in detail, each one. And we know the Torah doesn't waste any words, right? Right? And yet everyone's repeated the exact same thing 12 times. The Torah could have just said, and all 12 princes of the tribes offered the following, and list it once. Okay? So, one of the reasons for that is that this Parsha is usually read, this year also, the same week of Shavuos or the week after Shavuos. Right? The repetition is teaching you, Shavuos, we get the Torah. In order to retain Torah, you have to have Chazorah, review, over and over again. The same thing. And you find new insights into it. So that's one of the lessons. It also happens that this Parsha is the longest Parsha in the Torah. It's the longest Parsha in the Torah. So at the time that we accept the Torah, we got the Torah and we sit back and relax. No, now we delve into Torah more than ever before. And with the longest Torah portion, that's represented by that symbolism, right? 176 verses. The longest written Torah portion, which is parallel, of course, as Jeff will tell you. It's parallel to the oral Torah, the Talmud. 176 verses is this Parsha Nasso. That's parallel to the 176 pages of the tractate called Baba Basra. Right? And that is parallel to the 176 verses, the longest Tehillim, the longest Psalm of King David. 119. Psalm 119 is 176 verses. So, we should stop. I never thought of that. I never thought of that. Shavuos, that's interesting. Shavuos is the yortzeit of King David. We read Megillah Rus because that's his ancestry. That's where he stems from. That's very interesting. He was born on Shavuos and he died on Shavuos. Very interesting. So Tehillim, 176 verses, tells you a few things. Number one, we always look at Psalms as just something that's, nice, pretty, poetry, prose. No. deep Kabbalah involved. As a matter of fact, the fact that it's 176 verses and parallel to the oral law's longest tractate and the written law's longest Parsha, did you know King David put the Psalms, the Tehillim, in 5 books? There are 5 books parallel to the 5 books of Moses. There's a parallel there. Tremendous Kabbalah, tremendous Chochmah involved what King David wrote. He was writing not only about his own trials and tribulations, but all future generations of Jewry in exile. So, interesting, those correlations. The other things that Parsha Nasso talks about is we have the Saita, the Parsha of the Saita. A woman that's suspected of adultery goes through an ordeal of bitter waters. Then we have the Parsha of the Nazir. The Nazir is a person who wants to go on a higher level, like of a Kohen, and separates himself from wine and the impurity of dead, right? And he can take on a Nazareth vow for as little as 30 days or as long as a life. 2 of the most famous lifelong Nazirs, if you will, was the great Samuel, right? Shmuel Hanavi, and Shimshon, Samson, 2 very big tzaddikim. Make no mistake about that, by the way. Samson was a very big tzaddik. As a matter of fact, he was such a big tzaddik that Yaakov thought he was Mashiach. When he was giving the blessings, he saw, when he gave the blessing to Dan, he saw Shimshon, and he said, he thought that was it. He thought that was Mashiach. So anyways, that's the part of Nazir. Also in the Torah portion, on chapter 6, towards the very end of chapter 6, verses 24, 25, and 26, is Birchas Kohanim, the Kohanim, the blessings of the Kohanim, the priestly blessings, okay? Very, very deep mysticism involved in that, okay? I hope I covered everything. I don't know if I did. But that is basically some of the things that are in the Parsha. Now we'll try to go back and hit some of the highlights. One of the things we learn in this, we're going to Bamidbar, guys. In Bamidbar, we have these groupings, right? When we mentioned 3 tribes, right? And there was a tribe that was in charge, right, of each grouping of 3. Reuven was in charge of his grouping. Yehuda was in charge of his grouping. And he had Yisachar and Zevulun with them, right? And Benjamin, Ephraim was in charge of his grouping, and Dan was in charge of his grouping. Okay. So you read this account. Hopefully you'll read this account, and it's very detailed. It tells, where they camp to the east, these ones camp to the west, north, south, and it gives the numbers, how many they were. And, we're reading this, and it's very dry, and we're saying, who cares? It just doesn't, seem very significant to us. So, listen to this. I just want you to know that this Parsha is a tremendous show and display of affection and love for Hashem to His people. Because when we were at Mount Sinai, Ramban, Nachmanides explains this, when we were at Mount Sinai, the heavens were torn asunder. I like that. Right?
Smoke.
And what did we see? We had an unbelievable revelation. The revelation that we had is a similar revelation that is described in Ezekiel, the prophet Yechezkel, the Markava. We saw, I don't know what this means, but God's throne of glory surrounded by heavenly hosts. Heavenly hosts on 4 sides. And these angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and this description in Ezekiel also, the Chayos HaKodesh. It's one of the Haftorahs we read, I believe, on Shavuos. The holy animals. One had the image of a lion, and one had the image of an eagle, one was an ox, and one was the shape of a man. Okay? So we saw that, and we said, God, we want to serve you on that level. We had such a drive and desire to serve God on the same level that the heavenly host did. So God saw this desire that we had, and His love and affection for us, He granted it to us. It's amazing. And He said, here, set up your camp the following way. Just like I have a throne of glory in the middle of the heavenly hosts, so too you'll have the Mishkan, right? The tabernacle in the middle, and the Levim will be around it, right? And then you'll have the groupings of the tribes, 3, 3, 3, and 3. And Reuben, you know what was on his banner? Degel Reuben, Suras Adam. He had the image of a man on the Reuben's banner. And Yehuda led his grouping, Suras Aryeh, and his banner had the etching of a lion. And Ephraim had the etching, his banner had a drawing of the shore of the ox. And Dan had the image of an eagle. She'idmu the Kruvim Shra Yechizkiel Navi. And it was parallel to what Yechizkiel saw. It was a parallel to the heavenly hosts. We're serving God here on earth, right? Just like the heavenly hosts have the divine presence resting with them, God allowed us to duplicate that, and He rested His presence down here on earth like He did on high. An amazing, amazing concept. So you read this, and you just think, oh, it's very organized. There's something to that also, by the way. We'll talk about that. But this was very, very deep mysticism. Merkava, when you talk about Kabbalah, there's always two main subjects in Kabbalah. And this is the extent of what I know about Kabbalah, is how to pronounce these two words. And I'm probably not doing that right. And that's Masa Bereshis, the act of creation, and the Merkava, this thing that we're talking about. Okay? So there's very deep mysticism going on in this Torah portion. Okay? So, and he concludes, Ramban, Nachmanides, he said, Hayakol b'chachma. This is all done in tremendous wisdom, their encampments. B'kavod v'gedula l'Yisrael, and tremendous honor and godless, and tremendous prestige shown to Israel. Right? And therefore, laken yazkir hakasav b'prat. And therefore, the Torah mentions everything in its smallest detail. Because it shows the love that Hashem had for us. Okay? Now, organization. It says, Ish al Diglo. Very important. Again, no coincidence that we read this during the time of Shavuos, when we get the Torah. If you want to get, we keep praying every day, Ten chalkeinu b'sorasecha, give us our portion of your Torah. If you want your portion of Torah, you gotta know your place. Everybody had an encampment. Levim were closer to the Mishkan. No one else could get there. Right? The Kohanim were in the innermost sanctum. No one else could get there. These 3 tribes had a camp there. These 3 tribes had a camp there. Everybody had to know their place. Chapter 2, verse 2. Ish al Diglo. Every person, every man at his banner. Yechanu b'nei Yisrael. They camped, right? Everybody had their designated spot. Okay? So, there's an organization. There's an idea of knowing your place. Let's talk about organization. We're going from Pesach to Shavuos. Pesach, the highlight of Pesach is what? A Seder. You know what a Seder means? A Seder is an order. There's a sequence. 15 steps to the Seder, right? A sequence of things. You can't do things out of sequence, out of order. You can't have things out of priority. You gotta know the place. What your place, what the place of doing everything is, right? And in Israel, you ask somebody, how's it going? In Israel, say, Hakol b'Seder? Is everything okay? Isn't that beautiful? Hakol b'Seder. If everything has its priority, is in order, is in a set sequence, then you're okay. Hakol b'Seder. If you don't have a Seder to things, an order to things, a sequence of things, Hakol ein b'Seder. It's not good. They say in a Seder, order, to be organized, is like a clasp on a string of pearls. The string of pearls are good midos, good character traits. Person can be generous, patient, all these wonderful good midos. But if he doesn't have a clasp at the end of those string of pearls, they're squandered. They'll go everywhere, right? They're not worth anything. They are, but they're everywhere, right? So the clasp keeps everything in order, keeps them together, right? Anybody knows this, in business or anything else in the secular world. If you're in order, you have everything's organized, you are more, you can produce better. You don't waste as much time looking for everything, right? Okay? So that's one of the things here. Everything had a set place, a set order, how we encamped, who encamped first, when the tabernacle was taken down, when it was put up, who started traveling first, right? The whole sequence is told. The cloud would rise up, it would spread itself over the tribe of Yehuda, they would start, when they're about to encamp, what would happen, how, everything in exact order, right? And that's very important. Okay, there's a story told about a great Rav who came to Kelm, great yeshiva founded by one of the disciples of Yisrael Salanter. So when he came there, they asked him, you want to see, you want to speak to the Rosh Yeshiva? His boy was in the yeshiva. And he said, no, I don't want to see the Rosh Yeshiva. He says, you want to speak to his rabbi? No, I don't need to see the rabbi. I want to see his room.
Oh. Came
to his room. He saw the tables in order, the bed was made, shoes in it. He says, I know he's doing okay. So they were very meticulous in Kelm about Seder, very organized. In fact, these used to do a lot of things. They had a 5-minute learning Seder. It's interesting. A learning period is called a learning Seder. Saturday night. 5 minutes. That's all. They would say, okay, learn 5 minutes, and then they would stop. Why? Just to emphasize the importance of every moment. 5 minutes. There's a famous Rav who went through the entire 63 tractates of the Talmud many, many times. And every time he did that, he would have what's called a siyum, which is like a festive meal celebrating going through the entire Talmudic tract. It's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable accomplishment. And he did it many, many times. So one time he was having his siyum, like for the 50th time or whatever, and he looked particularly joyful, like this one was something special, and the students asked him, what's the big deal? It's a big deal, don't get me wrong, but why are you particularly so much in simcha this time? Because you don't understand. This siyum that I'm making on Shas, on the entire Talmud, is most beloved to me, more than any other one. Why? Because this was a separate Seder, a separate learning schedule I had, that I always took a Gemara with me when I was invited to a chasana, a wedding, or a bar mitzvah, or a bris milah, and while they were standing around waiting for things to get going, I would open and learn. 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 5 minutes here, waiting for a bus, right? And in the course of, I think, like 32 years, I went through the entire Shas, the entire 63 tractates. From 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, the value of every moment that most of us don't finish the whole, Talmud in our whole lifetime. So he said, this one's the most important to me, because that could have been squandered time if I wasn't organized. But basically, when you do mitzvahs with your time, you make it eternal. You take a transit moment and you make it into eternity. You can take it with you. Which leads me to the next of our Torah. It says in Nasso, in chapter 5, verse 10, something similar to what you say. It's very interesting language it says there. The ish es kedoshav lo yiyu. Right? A man and that's holy to him will be his. It's very interesting language. So, there's a simple meaning of it, of course. We don't want to escape the simple meaning of it. Right? Okay, but I want to get a little more in depth. You can read this very simply, that one makes holy, ish es kedoshav, you take $10 and buy a mitzvah with it, or do tzedakah, or do an act of kindness, lo you, it'll be yours. In other words, yes, you can take it with you. You thought you couldn't, right? But you can't. The materialism, you can't take it with you, right? But those things that you take and you make it kedoshav, you make it holy by doing mitzvahs with it, lo you, that'll be yours forever. So, it's like you're in a casino, right? Remember this? You get the chips, right? They're worthless. They're plastic. You can't buy anything. Go to a place, try to buy a suit with them. They don't give you nothing. But while you're in the casino, you can make more, right? And you can cash them in. That's this world. All the money you got, if you use those chips that are worthless intrinsically, but you can buy mitzvah spirituality with them, and you can cash in up there, right? Okay. What can I tell you? Okay, so that's one way you can take the gold and silver from this world and transform it into eternity. Okay. Now we're going to go back to the group. I just had to throw that in there because you kind of let it in there. It was too tempting. I had to go there. We learned that a person is affected by his environment. We talked about this many times. Now in the groupings of the tribes, we see that Kahat was one of the 3 families of Levi. Okay. And they were encamped next to Kahat. The encampment of the tribes was Reuven. Now, why is that significant? Says Rashi, oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheno. Woe is it to the wicked, woe is it to his neighbor. Because Korach, the rebellion of Korach rebelled against Moshe, and 250 people of Reuven were destroyed in that rebellion along with Korach, right? Because they went along with them. The reason they did is because they were encamped. Korach was from Kahat, and Reuven was encamped right next to him. They were influenced by them. You're influenced by your environment. You hear? And on the other hand, it says, Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shcheno. What's good for the tzaddik is good, it'll be good for his neighbor as well. And you find who was encamped next to Moshe and Aaron? That was Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zevulun. They all became great Torah scholars. Okay? So many times, if you want to behave, you don't want to go around running around in your t-shirt and underwear, you live right next door to the yeshiva. Because you're affected by your environment. You ain't going to do that around the yeshiva with everybody walking in and out there with payas and long beards, right? When you live there in Cut and Shoot, Texas, you might do that. Tiptoe through the cow chips. Okay. If you look at the last Torah portion from last week, it's actually, we're going to read it this week, but okay. The last Torah portion, thank you. The last Torah portion of Vayikra, the last verse says, Elah ha-mitzvahs, these are the mitzvahs, right, that God commanded Moshe to the children of Israel. And the next verse, which is the next Torah portion, next book, Midbar, okay, but these two verses are together in the Torah, right? There's a gap of some letters, okay? The next verse reads, and God spoke to Moshe in the desert of Sinai. Again, the previous verse, the last verse of Vayikra is, these are the mitzvahs that God commanded Moshe, and the first verse of the new book is, and God said to Moshe in the desert. So the fact that the smichas, they call this, why these are juxtaposed together, is to teach us, if you want to do mitzvahs, you want to have, right, these are the mitzvahs that God commanded Moshe, well, God spoke to Moshe in the desert. You got to be like a desert. You have to have a quality of a desert to be able to do Torah mitzvahs. That's the quality of humility. A desert's open. There's nothing there, right? Everybody tramples upon it, right? So that's the quality one needs to do mitzvahs. Okay, to be there's no coincidence. We talked about this. In the next Torah portion we're going to do, next week we're going to do Shavuos, but after that we're going to do Ba'alaischa. And the person who gave us the Torah, the one that had the most Torah in the world, right? Moshe is described as the most humble man on earth. Okay? Because it goes hand in hand. So that degree of your humility, that degree you have Torah. And as a matter of fact, all the prophets, one of the requirements, the prophet had 4 things, amazing. The prophet had to be wealthy, had a wealthy, wise, I think Baal Kima. He had to be like tall. I guess that's, he looked good. And humble. And so they talk a lot about that. The fact is, if a person is not wealthy and is, doesn't look honorable and does not have wisdom, he has nothing to be humble. There's no kunst to be humble. You go around saying, I'm a nothing, you're not being humble, you're just right. Right? But if you have all those things, you have something to be humble about. But it says, the Kotzker Rebbe says that about the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai was a low mountain. We all know that, all those big mountains wanted to have the Torah, and Hashem said, no, I'm going to give it on humble Mount Sinai. Right? Humble Mount Sinai gets it. So they say, if you want to teach humility, give the Torah in a valley. So the Kotzker Rebbe says, that's not humility. A valley is nothing. But to be a mountain and yet be humble, a small mountain, that's humility. So that's the idea. So this humility goes hand in hand. How humble a person is, how much he can nullify themselves, that's how much Torah they can receive. Okay. That was all one paper clip. Can't believe it. Okay. Jeff? Very good. That's a very good question. The definition of humility is not this very popular misconception. The definition of humility is not going around. Don't think that Moshe didn't realize that he was a great prophet. Okay, to deny one's talents and skills is not humility. That is a chutzpah. Hashem gave everybody certain skills and talents. You're to recognize them, but realize they're nothing to do with you. They're a gift from God. That's humility. Moshe's humility was, he figured anybody that God spoke to was that close to, could endow and be like him. I'm just a dry piece of wood. Because Baruch Hu decided, I'm his instrument. That's humility. Not denying your talents and skills, but realizing the source of your talent and skills. Big difference. 22,000 people in Levi. Okay, going back to this, that's parallel to the 22,000 heavenly host. Okay, that's Levi's special status. Levi is a cut above you and I, unless we have some Kohanim here. Because let me tell you about Levi. Levi was the tribe that was instructed by Yaakov to teach Torah and mitzvahs. They were the ones in Egypt that were never slaves. They never assimilated. They never moved out of Goshen until Egypt proper. They stayed there and learned Torah, right? They are the only tribes that kept the Bris Milah all the time in Egypt and all the time in the desert. Okay? They also never sinned with the golden calf or the spies or any of the other 10 tests that we tested God in the desert. They entered Israel. While we had a decree that generation had to be die between 20 and 60, they entered Israel, and while the rest of us had to have like a special mercy of God to take us out of Egypt, we didn't really merit it. They merited it on their own to have a Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay, so that's very special. That's the Legion of God. Okay, and by the way, they were not involved in taking all the booty. Another good word. At Yam Suf, at the splitting of the sea, we got more spoils there than we did at Egypt. They didn't get involved with that. That gold led somehow to the building of the golden calf. Okay, and to this day, a person who dedicates their entire life to Torah is called like a Shevet Levi. And Rambam, Maimonides, writes about this, that if not only Levi, it says, there's a verse that says, Ani chalkecha v'nachlasecha. I am your God says to Levi, I am your portion and your inheritance. Right? And therefore all the children of Israel have to give you tithing money and everything, right? Because you're completely devoted to the service of God. I'll be your source of sustenance. So Rambam says, Maimonides says, it's not Levi. Anybody can be a Levi. Anybody can join Levi. In other words, how? Anybody wants to completely devote themselves to spirituality, right? To that degree that you can do it. Honestly and sincerely, God will be your source of sustenance. Okay? So that's a little insight on Shevet Levi, and to this day we call someone steeped in Torah from Shevet Levi. Okay. Every encampment in the desert, and we're going to see several examples of this, had its own particular test. You know that? It's very interesting. Coming out of Egypt, that's called a kur barzel, a cleansing furnace. Right? Somehow we need to be purified and cleansed. Okay, even though we don't understand this, but afflictions cleanse us. As a matter of fact, in last week's Torah portion, it says in chapter 26, verse 41, in Bechukosai, it says, "Az yirtzu es avoinam," then your sins will be taken care of. Rashi, yikapru al avoinas biyusareim. Your sins will be atoned through all the suffering that you've suffered. All those series of curses that we're going to read this Shabbos. Somehow, the fact that, in fact, Eov, Job, I never pronounce this guy's name right. Job, whatever the guy's name is. Okay. So there's a lot of opinions in the Gemara. Was he just a parable? Did he really exist? Was he Jewish? Was he not Jewish? But one thing in the Gemara says that he got afflictions for no reasons, it seemed. Like he was a very righteous person. And it says in the Gemara he got afflictions so God could reward him. So he could get the afflictions, not complain, and God could display him and see what a righteous person he is. Okay? So the fact that a person gets afflictions could sometimes be the best gift. All right. No, it's true. It's true. We pray not to have them. But if you do have them, I'm saying in retrospect. Okay, that shut him up. Okay. All right. So, okay. So in reference to that, Kur Barzel, Egypt was a cleansing furnace. And the process continues through the desert. It acts as a cleansing furnace, and every one of these encampments was a particular test. One says he's Avu Taiva. We had a desire. Like for me, there was a certain thing, there was a test in the area of desires that we had to conquer there. That's why each encampment, some was 1 day, one place was 19 years. Because each one, we had to be there a certain amount of time to fix up what needed to be fixed up. Very mystical things going on in these encampments in the desert. Okay, so keep that in mind. And therefore, when you do see signs that Israel trips up on these, know that it's on a very, very high level. Okay? So, by the way, this is a good example how a person can read the Torah and just read about the encampments. This is the journeys they took, or see the depth in it. See the depth in it. You can read the Torah on one level, which is true. These were the physical encampments. Or you can see the tremendous rectification they were doing in the world in the tests. They say, Rav Zevin says, this is the way it is in the world. He says, this world is a mushal. It's like a parable. This whole world is a parable. You think this stuff is real, don't you? Anyway, so he said this world is a parable, and he says, I'll give you an example. You got two people reading a book, right? So one person reads it in depth with understanding, and another person reads this book and just spits the words out. Just reads right through it. And he says, Sefer Gadol Hu Ha'olam. This world is a big book. The Ashrei Adam Sheyadei Likrot Bo Lavino. Happy is the person, wealthy is the person who knows how to read the world and understand what's going on. There's things going on in the world that Hashem is hinting to spiritual realities. Everything you see, everything you do, whatever it is, right? You're supposed to draw a lesson from the parable of the world on how to serve God. So some people go through the world and they just see birds fly and fish and events going on. It doesn't move them a bit. Right? They just go around blindly. They just spit out the words. Another person goes through the world and see unbelievable things in the world, see spiritual realities to this parable that we call the world and nature. So you got to look into the world, see the signs, see the wonders, right, and realize it's a parable for a spiritual reality, for higher sources. Okay. Okay. Again, on this idea of organization on these encampments, I just want to mention one more thing. The word shalom, which is peace, is from the word shlemus, which means whole, harmony. When are we at peace with each other and within ourselves? To have tranquility and peace of mind. When a person's in harmony, organized, everything's in order. You have your priorities right? And you got that, then you have shalom. An inner peace, and then, of course, an outer peace to everybody else. That's the perfect harmony that we're supposed to have with others and what we're doing. And all this is based on not infringing, this Rabbi Aaron Kotler says this, of knowing your particular place and not infringing on your friend's boundary. Everybody got to know their role, right? And don't try to assert someone else's role, right? We always use an example, this guy's wearing glasses and you're not, so you're jealous. Why would you want glasses? He's got glasses, I want glasses. The glasses only harm you. You didn't have to take them off. Okay.
I'm hoping they belong to someone else.
Okay. And by the way, that's why one of the primary services that the Levim had in the temple was the song. If you look at the end of the Siddur, there's the song of the Levim for the first day, for the second day. Because a song, as we mentioned once before, if you remember, represents a harmony. A totality of all creation, how everything's in place. That's what a song is a very mystical thing. Prophets used to use song and musical instruments to get prophecy. Very, very spiritual, big spiritual dimension. Okay? So the Levim, which we mentioned, right, they're like the heavenly host down here, right? Their song represents in the Holy Temple the recognition of the total harmony of the creation of God, of the universe, and everything that's under His control, right? And for us, this is a lifelong task. To sing our own particular song, which is our unique mission in this world. Okay? I'm going to talk about a example. This thing you mentioned, hitting the cleft, to forget the Torah that we learned in the womb. There's another example we mentioned earlier with Pesach. You're given something to get a little bit of a feel of it, and then it's taken away. You learn the entire Torah in the womb, then you come out here to the world trial, tribulation, it's taken away from you. So why was it given to you? Well, one idea is that it's in your subconscious, so now you can retrieve it better, and also to give you an intrinsic desire for it. Okay? Let's talk a little about the blessings of the Kohanim. The blessing of the Kohanim is Vayivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha. God should bless you with wealth and keep it, safeguard it for you, right? And Yisasha Hashem Pana B'lech V'Yichunecha. God should grant you a chain, a charm, right? Esther is described that everybody, she had like a chut shel chesed, a thread of grace over her. Everybody liked her, okay? And then the final one is shalom, peace, okay? So that's always considered the ultimate bracha. With the final blessing in the Shemona Esrei is shalom, right? The final blessing in the priestly blessings is shalom. And it says God found no better vessel to hold the blessings than shalom. Of course, doesn't mean you, for the sake of peace and harmony, right? That doesn't mean you chip away at the truth, right? You understand? Doesn't mean you give up everything for the sake of peace and getting along with people. That's not shalom. That eventually causes a complete destruction. But interesting, on this, Rav Yeshua says, of all things, I don't pretend to understand this, but he says on the middle blessing, that God should grant you chen, grace, charm, right? That Hashem should enlighten your face and grant you chen. Rav Yeshua Omer, that in this is koilel all the brachas. In this encompasses all the blessings there are in that blessing. Interesting. The Zohar says that during the time that the Kohanim are blessing the people, there is a special time of mercy, a rachamim, right? And there's all sorts of things going on in the upper world, and it gives us the ability to overturn any evil decrees. As a matter of fact, you look at some of the Sidurim, in particular dreams that can be an omen of some sort of future events. Even though today they say our dreams are full of pretty much preoccupations of what we do during the day, but it say that the priestly blessings has the ability to revoke any possible bad dreams. We shouldn't know from it. Okay, it's the mitzvah to confess one's sins. Okay, from our Torah portion. Remember Yom Kippur? Still have black and blue marks there. We're doing all that vidui all the time. That's interesting. Vidui is from the word, Yehuda, Toda, Litzvadais, to admit, to confess. Right? It's the hardest thing in the world for us to do. To admit that we were wrong. So if you look at chapter 5, verses 6 and 7, it says, Ki yasu mikol chatas adam, person does any sin, ma'al b'Hashem. He stole from God. And then it says, the next verse, V'isvadu es chatoisam, and you shall confess your sins. That's what it says. You shall confess your sins. You hear? So that's interesting, that we learn the mitzvah of confessing one's sins from this thing that says that, you can read it, that Yasu mikol chatas, that a person does any sin, you know what? Mal Hashem, he stole from God. Really, every sin is me'ila. Me'ila is a stealing from sacred, from sanctity. Something that's dedicated to the temple, and then you took it and misused it, that's called me'ila. So they say, every sin has this property. That's why we learn the mitzvah to confess one's sins from here. Why? Because if you think about it, God gave us time, energies, talents, right, abilities. At any time we misappropriate those funds or those skills or those talents or those energies, to do our thing, not as a means to an end, just as an end to itself, we are guilty of stealing from God. Because He gave us those special tools and skills to serve Him in a unique way. Okay, so therefore, confessing for one's overall sins is learned out from this verse. Because da shekol aveira hi b'chlal gezel, says the Chedush Aram. Every sin is in the arena of theft. Sheken Hashem Yisborach noten la'adam chiyus v'koyach. Hashem gave us strength and life. Laman yasetz ritzono, that we should do His will, right? And im adam menatzas hakoyach v'achiyus k'dei la'avam l'ratzon ha'boireh. And if we misuse these things to sin with, He goes further, Not just about something, but we use these same properties and these same, hands and feet and eyes to sin with, to see and do things we're not supposed to do, right? Hare memela hu goizel. You're stealing from Hashem, he says. Okay? Okay, so that's why we confess sins from here. So we have to be cognizant why we have certain abilities. We have a famous story in the Tanakh about a certain person whose vineyard was, he was framed. The wicked Ahab, there was a wicked king Ahab and Jezebel, right, his wife, they framed the guy, had him killed because they covered his vineyard. So they asked the question, okay, they were wicked, we understand that. But what did he do to deserve his vineyard being taken? He was a Levi, had a beautiful voice. He used to go every one of the 3 festivals and go to the temple and sing. And everybody used to get a tremendous, a tremendous, awakening from his voice. Song can move a person and help him serve him. And this one festival, he didn't go down. So he was a very great man. So because of that slight sin, he had a death penalty on him. I gave you a certain skill set, God, to use, to serve me. He didn't even misuse it. He didn't go around singing, Mississippi Queen or something with it, right? He just you remember that? Okay, right? He just didn't use it. Not misuse it, didn't use the skill that God gave him. They had a death penalty on him. It's an amazing thing. Okay, we're not holding that level, but at least we shouldn't use what we're given to sin with. Okay, okie doke. We're about to finish up here, guys, because I'm running out of paper clips, so that must mean we're finishing up. The Nazir has certain halachas. Let's talk about the Nazir, okay? Nazir, right, abstains from wine and any grape product, including raisins, and he can't be around any dead. So, as a matter of fact, if he approaches a vineyard, what does he do? He detours around it. That's interesting. He's just not allowed to eat it. So why can't he walk by the detour? Why can't he walk by the vineyard? Why does he have to detour around it? It teaches a very important lesson. The best safeguard. It ain't working today, this tongue. It's I don't know what the deal is. The best safeguard against sinning is to distance yourself from temptation. So and we learn that from the Nazir. What is it? Comes in a vineyard, get yourself away from it. Right? Get yourself completely away from it. You remember the story I told you here from the Gemara? The guy has 2 paths to go. One path is a way where women are washing their clothes, which back then means their ankles and, maybe their wrists are going to show because, to wash their clothes. And the other way is a straight way. And he says, you know what? I'm going to go the way the women are washing their clothes and not look at them. I'm not going to look at the ladies. And therefore, I'll serve God on a higher level. I'll encounter the tests, subdue my evil inclination, right? And he does it. And he doesn't look. And the Gemara calls him a Rasha, a wicked person. Because his test was at the fork of the road not to put himself in a situation of a test. Don't tempt yourself. You don't poke the Yetzer Hara in the eye. Okay? So that's a big lesson for us. Even if you get away with it once or twice, you'll get cocky and think you can always get away with it, whatever the situation is. Okay? Best thing to do, distance yourself, detour around the vineyard. The word that's used in chapter 6, verse 2, when it talks about the Nazir taking on this oath of abstaining from the physical, and we'll have to talk about that because we don't believe in that really. We believe to get involved in the physical and raise it to holiness. So, first of all, the word is used as pella, yipala, which means a wonder, an amazement. Ibn Ezra says on this, you know what? It's amazing why they uses this word. It uses this word because Da kikol b'nei adam avdei taivas ha'olam. No, everybody, every human being, they chase after the desires of this world. V'hamelech be'emes, and the real true king, sheyesh lo nezer v'ateres malchus, the one who has a crown of kingdom on his head, right? Kol mishu chafshi min ha'taivas, a person who is free from desires and lusts. So this is a wonder that this person separated himself from physicality, which everybody else is chasing after. It's like a miracle, right? Because everybody's chasing after it. So that's considered an amazing thing. Now, but I know you guys got a lot of questions on this, so let's finish it up with this. Here's the question. In Tanis, in the Gemara in Tanis, it says the following thing. It says, you know what? It says in chapter 6, verse 14, he has to bring a chata'as. He has to bring a sin offering. Why? Well, because he was a Nazir. At the end of his Nazareth vow, let's say he took a Nazareth vow for a year. Okay, at the end of that year, he has to bring a sin offering. Why? Because he was on a very high level, and he should have stayed there. Right, says Ramban, and now he went back to the physical world. When he was on such a high level, he has to bring a sin offering. Right? Another place in the Gemara, it says, and another thing it says, you know what? He separated him, so that's one side. And then it says, you know what? He has to bring a sin offering because he separated himself from wine. Wine is a pleasure that God gave, right? And God wants you to enjoy his world. There was a pleasure here, wine, and you didn't enjoy it, you got to bring a sin offering. Okay? And again in the Gemara it says, the other way around, it says he's called a Kaddish. He's called a holy person, the Nazir. So what do we got here? So this is very, very apropos to today's society, right? With all the vegetarian wackos and everything. So if a person is really sincere, and he's got a problem with, if a person is really sincere and has a problem with chocolate or meat, this is what I want to tell you. You could do the same act and be Kaddish, you could be holy, or you have to bring a sin offering. If you got a problem, you're too involved in the physical, you're a chocoholic, right? You got or a problem with steak, whatever it is. I'm not talking about health. We're going to leave health out. Of course, a legitimate reason if a person has high blood pressure, right? But, right, and that's why you're separating yourself. Look, I'm getting too much into I'm losing Shabbos in the Cholent. I'm getting too much into this stuff. I'm going to separate myself from it because I see I'm not on the level to raise the physical to Kedusha, which is a higher level. So I got to separate myself from it because it's distracting me from my service to God. You're called a Kaddish. You're holy. You're holy. That's a tremendous level. Right? But if you abstain from meat because you think, oh, the poor cow, right? And that cows are people too, or animals are people and people are animals, then you're a sinner. You got yourself a very big problem. Besides the fact that Kabbalistically you do a great disservice to that cow, because a cow and everything in the world gets its ultimate rectification when it's consumed by man, who's the pinnacle of creation. I know that's a very, very big novel idea in today's society, that we're higher than animals because we don't act it. But we are. Okay? So therefore, the same act, right? And there's a lot of them out there, vegans and all these people that do this because they feel they're being more merciful than the all-merciful one. Don't make up your own Torah. You got yourself a very big problem. Okay? And by the way, all the sins of the great people are connected to that. We're going to see it's Parsha in the Torah that they desired meat. Why? Because they're eating man. There was nothing to rectify. They wanted to eat physical food to rectify and eat it with Kedusha. Right? We should be on that level. Right? They were slammed for it and considered sinners. Why? Because they tried to be holier than God. They tried to serve God on a higher level than He designated for them. And the lesson for us is we got to just do what we're told. God gave us certain restrictions. Just abide by them. Okay? So anyways, that's the idea of the Nazir, right? Depends. Everybody, in their own, no matter why they're doing certain things. You could be a Chata, you could be a Kaddish, and we're going to finish with this, guys, and for the day. Here it is. I did have it here. The acronym for Israel. But before I do that, I just got to share this one thought from last week's Torah portion because I know it's overwhelming you guys. Then I'll give the acronym for Israel. But this is the sequence of the curses since we're going to read it in here. Unbelievable. See if this fits any depiction of any institution today. We won't mention any names, conservative reform. Okay. It says first, you know what's going to be the series of events? Lo tasu, you won't do the mitzvahs. Right? You won't do the mitzvahs. Okay, fine. Then what's going to happen? B'chukaisai timasu. Then it will be disgusting to you that others are doing the mitzvahs. And then what? Seine chachamim. You'll hate the sages. And then what? Moines acharim mi'asas. You'll keep others from doing the mitzvahs. And then what? Kaifer shalot tzivisim. Then you'll be a complete heretic and say that God didn't command him. Okay? 7 sins he goes into, and therefore God brings 7 punishments. Very interesting. I will not commentary on this. These are all Rashis. All Rashis. Okay? If you go in my statutes, if you treat all the mitzvahs of God like a statute, you don't try to reason, and give them a logic according to your thinking, right? But you realize they're all like a chok, then, that's cute. I wasn't going to say that, but I'll say it anyways. In other words, Nasa v'nishma, we'll do. We don't know what it is. Even if it seems to make sense. We're doing it because you said do it, right? then you'll merit the im. Im b'chukoisai. Im. Aleph Mem. You'll merit, that's the acronym, the Reish Tevos, the initials of Eliyahu and Mashiach. If you do the mitzvahs like chukim, like statutes, you'll merit Elijah and the Messiah, which are M, Im, Aleph Mem. One thing. But the other thing is, you notice that Telechu, if you do my statutes, you go in my statutes. Telechu, right? Same word we use for Torah laws. Halacha. Halacha is from the word halicha. How to go. How to walk. How to get through this world. Right? Keep saying it. We came with an instruction booklet. Right? How to go through this world. That's halacha. Halacha teaches you how to go. Torah values, right? That's why we go to our Torah sages for advice, because they're steeped in Torah. They look at things through Torah lenses, right? A person who lives Torah rather than studies Torah, that's a person you want to get advice from. That's why, by the way, right? We mentioned this in Pirkei Avos class. The bracha that we say on the Torah in the morning is Oisek b'Torah. You're occupied. You're involved in the Torah, not just Lilmud Torah. You may not learn a word of Torah all day, but you're involved in the world. You're doing everything according to the Torah, right? So the idea of in bichukoisai tilechu, to go in the statutes of Torah, is to live the Torah, not to study it, right? And look at everything. Your thinking process has to be through Torah. It has to be integrated in your personality. You know, everything is this. What I'm doing, my emotions, my reflections, in harmony with the Torah, right? With halacha. Alright? So, this connects, I don't know how, but somehow it must connect, to Yisrael. The acronym for Yisrael is Yesh. I lost it. The acronym for Yisrael is Yesh, Shishim, Rava, Oisios, L'Torah. There are 600,000 letters of the Torah. Right? There's 600,000 root souls. I don't know how this works. You're counting in the desert. You keep coming up 600,000 left Egypt. 20 to 60, the males. 20 to 60. But those are the root souls of all of Israel. That's how many letters there are in the Torah. If you count them up, you won't come up with that figure, by the way. But you got to know certain words or I can't go into all this. Certain letters are made up of more than one letter. But whatever it is, the idea is,
due to circumstances beyond our control, the remainder of this class was not recorded. We truly apologize.